Go, you're on.
This is the D236 engine-driven model, equipped with a Ford V10 gas engine. This application is specific to fit on the trailer cart that's being applied. What we're going to do is we're going to go through basic service elements on this machine. First, up front here, radiator package. This needs to be cleaned out daily. In your particular environment, you're not going to be seeing a lot of dirt and debris getting sucked into the radiator, so I would do more of just a daily inspection maintenance. You always want to use air, always blow it back out the way it came. The way that this guard comes down, you pull this wing nut loose, there's some clips down below, you lift the guard out of the way, and then clean out from there. Going towards the engine compartment, this system is equipped with an AgOtter rate controller. It's controlled by an iPhone device, any Apple device. So upon startup, you're going to want to go through basic spray calibration procedures. So you need to have your applied rate, your ground speed, and the swath width that you're trying to apply. Basic electronics, so when cleaning, pressure washing, anything of that nature, you want to stay far away from this area of the machine, and then also in the area of the top of the engine block, things like that. If you're going to clean, use air on that part of the application. Daily filtration, so you have an inline suction filter, you have discharge pressure filters in the rear, you have a tank mixing basket. So if you're mixing any powders of any nature, you want to put your powders into the basket. You want to open your bypass valve with the machine on, and that'll allow you to mix that water through the system. You do that by the means of this valve here. So there's an electric switch on your control console that'll allow you to dump all the water from the pump back to the tank basket and allow you to mix. You always want to keep that mixing basket in place as well. Maintenance on the pump. So this pump is a very robust pump. Typical service life is 10 to 15 years if it's maintained properly. There's a couple of grease points that need to be addressed on a 40-hour type basis. You want to grease them to a certain fill level. You don't want to over grease because you can actually force the seal out of the pump, and that just lends for debris to get into the bearings. We supply this with a 9/16. It's actually not a 9/16. It's a quarter pipe plug, but it takes a 9/16 end wrench to pull the plug, and we typically use a piece of welding wire or something. You want about 2 inches of grease in that cavity. The pump is a centrifugal pump. So what that means is it's using centrifugal force to force the water through the pressure plumbing system, and that's what's applying the pressure and the rate. Very high volume pump, 200 gallons or 100 gallons per minute. But the pump does require water flow through it. You don't want it to cavitate water, you don't want it to run dry. So don't let the clutch sit and idle for long periods of time. You either want to kick that clutch out or open that bypass valve and allow the water to flow through the system. The clutch has 2 main grease points and then an engagement arm grease point as well. One grease point is going to be a shot of grease daily on the main support shaft bearing, and the other grease point is going to be on a 100-hour basis, 1 to 2 shots of grease, and that's on the engagement lever arms internally on the clutch. This can also be found in our service manual that'll explain what those grease points look like. Air cleaner, air filtration is done from the other side of the machine, the passenger side. You want to check and maintain that air filter daily. Tap it out. They don't recommend using air. In your particular application, I would say a daily check before you run. In your particular case, I would say you're probably fine to leave it alone, being that you're in a very clean environment. Driveline U-joints are going to be on a 40-hour basis. So if you're running a hard week, couple shots of grease in each driveline U-joint, one in the front, one in the rear, and that should cover you off on that. Going to the back of the machine, debris on the fans, debris within the air vanes. You just want to make sure that you physically inspect that and clean those. This particular machine, because of its nature, doesn't have a mechanical agitator, so you don't have to have any mechanical agitation to maintain. Fan shaft bearings. So this is the most critical part on this whole piece of equipment. You want to grease those bearings until they actually purge grease. So if you take a look at the bearings on this unit, this is a Type E Pella block bearing. We do put grease points that access out to the outside without having to lift the guards. You never want to grease this machine while it's running. You never want to open these guards while it's running. But if you look inside of here, you have a Type E Pella block bearing. You literally want the grease to purge out around the faces of that bearing. It's not a sealed bearing, and we actually want the debris to get forced out on a daily basis. So greasing is incredibly critical on that. It could take 20, 30, maybe even 50 pumps of grease if the interval's been too long. And then the outboard bearing on this particular is just an adjustable flange bearing, which is greased from the top of the bell ring. And you can physically see the grease force out around the face of that from the inside of the leading edge of the housing. Nozzle maintenance, there is a filter element within the nozzle. The nozzle does come apart for cleaning. If you're running mostly liquids, you're probably not going to see any plugging issues whatsoever. But keeping the filtration on the forward end of this system is going to be critical to not getting nozzle plugs on this end. Spray boom manifold is designed where you can pull pins, take it off. There's a garden hose connection here where you can easily disconnect the hoses. And there is a valve here to shut water off from the spray boom in the rear. This boom is specifically designed, if you look at the ground here, it's wet, to have a really solid overlap on the chemical dispersion. Every nozzle is set up with a diaphragm check valve. What that does is that stops the water instantly when you shut the spray booms off, as soon as that manifold drops below 10 pounds of pressure. Every valve has an individual valve on it as well. It allows you to be able to shut on or off those individual nozzles. Leaf guard is designed to stop any debris from the ground getting sucked into the outboard fan. And especially in this case, we didn't want to see any suction pulling this water back into the machine. So that's an important piece. Spray lights are equipped here. When this machine is set on its skid, you'll have 10,000 lumens, actually 11,000 lumens of lighting to light this when you're in a dark environment. And that's the basis.